After busting day 1A, this is my second and final shot at this tournament, one of the bigger buy-ins I'm going to play all year long. And it's starting to hit me as I walk to my table that this tournament could be a really big deal if you ran deep. On my way to my seat, I passed a production crew, TV hosts getting interviewed or giving interviews. I passed a star-studded field full of high rollers and faces and names that I recognize from TV. Needless to say, I was starting to feel my nerves a little bit. But that anxiety immediately dissipates when I sit down at the most kumbaya day 1B table I've ever sat at for such a big event. There's one guy at my table who I would consider the ringleader, sort of the table captain of table talk, who has started the day by asking everyone their name and what they're grateful for. Like I said, it sounds a little kumbaya, but honestly, it was really nice to start out the day with some gratitude and just a really human moment to really ground me back into the fact that it's just day one. All you can do is focus on one hand at a time. After about an hour and a half of playing and chatting with my table, I'm feeling settled when hijack opens to 1,000. I look down at pocket queens in the cutoff, and he's been opening a lot, but I'm gonna 3-bet this anyway, and so I do that here. I make it 3,000 to go. Just the hijack comes along. Heads up, we see a flop of Jack 3 deuce, which is pretty perfect for pocket queens. He checks to me, and just as I would do with pretty much everything I've got in this spot, I c-bet for 2,500. He quickly makes the call, which I'm happy to see, and the turn comes the 3 of hearts. So I'm gonna continue on this turn after he checks to me. I wanna go big. I'm gonna get a lot of value from his Jack X, from pairs under a Jack even, and all of his draws. So I bet 8,000 into 12. And he considers this action for a little longer before making the call. The pot is starting to swell, and we see the river card, which is the ace of clubs. Not exactly happy about that. If he had something like ace jack, or if he had ace x of hearts that picked up equity on the turn, or ace 5, ace 4, stuff like that, ace deuce. So not exactly happy with this river card. The question is, could I squeeze out a little more value from him if he had a jack? Do I think he's gonna call with a jack, or am I gonna scare him off because of the ace hitting on the river? All of that's going through my mind when I finally say, I guess I check. And he flips over 6-4 of hearts. So he was getting a little spicy with this one, turned some equity, decided not to lead on the river and bluff me off what I had, and we take down a decent sized pot.
Probably a good card to bluff at, but I don't know.
Good defense.
Yeah, you could have had like a ace jack.
Only a little while later, the under the gun 1 player opens to 1K. The hijack and button both call, and I'm in the small blind with 10-8 of clubs. I'm happy to take a flop, even multi-way, so I flick in the call. The big blind comes along as well. So even in a 3,500, you're still gonna have 5-way pots. So here we go. Flop comes out, Jack 6-5, 2 clubs and a spade. I check, the big blind checks, under the gun checks, and it's on to the hijack, who throws out a bet of 2,200. The button, who's my opponent from the first hand, makes the call. I call as well. The big blind puts in the money, and the only one to fold is under the gun 1. So all 4 of us now to a turn. I'm starting to doubt if my draw is even gonna be good at this point, but here's to hoping. The turn is the queen of clubs, what I think is a gin card for us. I play in flow, I check, the big blind checks, hijack checks, and button checks. So everyone checks this turn. I'm really feeling good about my hand after that. The river brings the 7 of hearts. So now that I have a 10-eye flush, I want to get my value, so I lead out for 5K. It's not a huge bet because 4 ways, if I'm not going to be bluffing a lot, I can't really be betting big. So I bet 5K, and one by one, everyone folds around. Some take a little longer to fold. They have a little funeral for their cards, but eventually they hit the muck and we take down another pot. It's a friendly table, so the button reveals he had 8-7 of spades and missed his straight draw. So the very next hand, the blinds have just gone up. The low jack opens to 1,200, and I'm on the button with ace queen offsuit. I make it 3,600. When it folds back around to the low jack, he looks a little bit flustered. He's seen me do this a few times now, and he makes the call. So the flop comes out, king jack 7, 2 diamonds and a heart. He checks it over to me. I am gonna bet this one a decent bit. I might wanna size up on this one though, but in game, I only bet 3,000. He gives us another long tank before he finally lets it go. So yeah, we're doing really well so far, moving in the right direction, up about 30,000 from 50K starting stack. Staying pretty active this level, I look down at pocket jacks under the gun and make it 1200. Chrissy B is in the under the gun 2 spot. She 3-bets me to 3600, and when it folds back to me, I have a pretty easy call. I flick out the 2400 and we're heads up to a flop, which comes king 4-3, 2 spades and a club. Just one overcard. I'm going to be continuing on this board a lot. So when she c-bets for 3K, I toss in the call. On the 7 of diamonds turn, it goes check, check. The river is an offsuit 10. I check it one more time, planning on calling a medium-ish size bet, but she checks back, doesn't put us in a tough spot. And when I reveal that I have jacks, it is good, and we take down yet another pot. In one of the last hands we get involved in before break, hijack opens to 1400, a little bigger than the rest of us. Small blind makes the call, and I have jack 10 offsuit in the big. I'm coming along, so 3 ways. We all see a flop of jack 7-3 with 2 clubs. Checks around to the original raiser, and he decides to bet 1200. Small blind makes the call, and with top pair, I'm not going anywhere, so I toss in the 1200. And the 3 of us are still in the pot. We all see the turn, which is an 8 of hearts. So now we've got a gutter to go with our top pair. Small blind checks, I check playing in flow, and the hijack checks this one back. The river is a 9 of spades, so our gutter ball does come in. The small blind checks it to me. I stand to have the best hand almost always. So I bet 5,500. Hijack thinks for a really long time. He is a really good player, really tough player who's been putting everyone in the cage. He tosses in just a call and the small blind folds. Obviously, when he just calls, we're gonna be good. So I flip my hand over and rake in yet another pot. Now it's off to break. We're up on a high note. The next big pot we play, I have ace king of clubs under the gun 2 and make it 1500 to go. Just the big blind comes along, so the 2 of us see a flop, which is queen 5 deuce 2 clubs. We have a nut flush draw, 2 overs. It feels good to be hitting flops today. Big blind checks it over to me, and I'm going to c-bet this one. I bet the same size I would with most of my holdings. I go 33% of the pot, which is 1300, and he comes along. So we both see the turn, which is the jack of clubs. We have the nut flush on the turn. Things just keep getting better. Big blind checks it to me again, and I'm gonna continue obviously, so I put out 3,500. I don't wanna go too big, especially when I have the ace and the king of clubs, because it's gonna be really hard for him to call down if he can't have the second nuts. So if I had a hand like ace 10 of clubs, I would go maybe a little bigger because it's possible to cooler him if he had the second nut flush. He calls. The river is the 10 of diamonds. He checks it to me, and I overbet this spot a little bit. I bet 15K into a pot of 13.5. Not really sure what I would be bluffing here because, you know, the natural bluffs that come to mind contain the ace of clubs without a club to go with it. So what would those look like? It would be ace king with the ace of clubs, which river's a straight, not a bluff any longer. And the ace 10 and maybe ace 10 with the ace of clubs, which that would be a pretty good bluff candidate. But other than that, maybe ace 9 off, ace 8 off. So it's hard to have a lot of bluffs here, so I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to be going big in this spot, but that's what I ended up doing. I bet 15,000 into 13.5. I guess I just didn't think too deeply into it in game and just pretended to myself that I would have more bluffs than I actually probably do. So this is definitely a mistake on my part. Doesn't really matter though, because he ends up making the call after quite a long think, and we get probably the maximum out of our nut flush.
Everything. I guess they're royal. Just the nuts. What they do.
Yeah. Bottom of my range. Thank you. Next, under the gun 1 opens to 1500. I'm on the button with pocket 8s and make the call, and Chrissy is in the big blind. She comes along as well. 3 ways. The dealer puts out jack 3-3 with 2 hearts and a club. Chrissy checks. Under the gun 1 checks this one, which I was surprised about, and I check back. You would think the hand is over, but the turn is the 8 of hearts. Such a gin card. I'm just running so hot right now. Chrissy leads this turn. She bets out 2K, a little more than a third of the pot. Under the gun 1 lets it go, and now I have a decision whether to raise or just slow play. And because I don't have any hearts in my hand, it's more likely that she does. So I want to start getting value in now. In the past, I've worried about what bluffs I've had, maybe a little too much, and maybe against such a high caliber player, I should be worried a little more about it than I was in this spot, but I just wanted to stop holding myself back and trying to play like too balanced, quote unquote, and just get value from my good hand. So landed on a raise, I made it 6,000 and she made the call. The river is the king of hearts. So now there's 4 to a flush on board. We still have basically the nuts, and I'm just hoping she has the ace of hearts. She checks it over to me. I bet a little less than half pot this time just to get a crying call out of her already made flushes that aren't too happy on this river. But after a little while, she lets it go. She looks visibly frustrated, so I do think she probably had a flush on the turn. And if she didn't, maybe she made a really big hero fold because, to be honest, I look like I have a really good hand. Good fold on her part, and we're just continuing to build. In the last notable hand before break, the jolly table chatter captain opens the button to 2,200. I have ace 10 of clubs in the big blind. I make the call, and we both see the flop, which comes down ace 9, 7 rainbow. No clubs, so we just have the top pair going on, and I check it over to him. He c-bets for 2K, easy call for me. The turn comes the 7 of clubs. He slows down on this one. He checks this one back. The river comes out a queen of spades. I have an easy bluff catcher here, so I check it over to him. He falls for it. He tosses out 5K. I quickly call it off. And he shows 6-5 of diamonds. He whiffed his gutter ball. We take down a nice little pot right before break. Somehow food tastes better when you know you have piles of chips waiting for you in a 3,500 when you get back. So I was starting to think that maybe the first half of my day was a little too good to be true. I don't have anything to show for the next 2 hours of play. My stack kind of hovered around the same amount, and all the players that were busting at my table were getting replaced by better and better competition. So the nerves started kicking back in as we head into the last 2 hours of play. And in this one of those good players opens under the gun 1 to 4,000. I peel 9 of diamonds on the button, and the small blind makes the call. So 3 ways we go to a flop, which is ace, queen, jack, 2 diamonds. The small blind checks, the pre-flop raiser checks as well, and I think he could be doing this with good hands. He is a good player, he's gonna be balanced here, and with my flush draw, I don't wanna get blown off my hand. This guy has been putting everyone in the cage the past 2 levels. I don't really wanna end up bloating this pot with a 9 high flush draw, so I just check it back. The dealer puts out a 3 of diamonds on the turn. So we hit our flush, and the small blind takes this opportunity to lead 6,500. Under the gun 1 makes the call. So now it's on me with my flush. I think that this is a pretty simple call, I have to say, because I think it would be a little bit overplaying to raise this low of a flush. So I just call, and we all see the river, which comes a 6 of hearts. Small blind now checks. Under the gun 1, who's a really good player, goes really deep into the tank. He thinks we're probably 2 minutes or more, really long tank, to the point where it was a little uncomfortable. But he finally decides on betting, and he puts in a bet of 34,000. So almost a full pot size bet on this river. I think that he is one of the few players that I would give credit for being able to bluff in this spot. He plays a GTO strategy and has shown up with a lot of funny hands correctly, but if there's anybody who's gonna have a bluff in this spot, it's gonna be this guy. I'm not going anywhere. I make the call. Small blind folds, and under the gun 1 reveals that he has king 7 of diamonds for the second nut flush. Putting a dagger into my soul, we lose a huge chunk of the stack, and it's pretty deflating, especially in the last level of the night. It's gonna be hard to boost your morale when you're 10.5 hours into the day and you just took such a gut punch to your stack. But you know, in a flush over flush situation, this is gonna happen. So just hoping to close out the night on a high note and bag for day 2. I end the night with a very sad looking 65,000, but at least we bag for day 2. There's always another chance if you're still in the tournament to get back in it. All right guys, day 2 today. I only got 25 big blinds, but we're gonna try to run it up today. I have Alan Kessler at my table, Nick Palma, a couple other people that I recognize, but for the most part, I think it's a pretty good table. So let's get after it. Like I said, I have 25 bigs. There's 650 something players left. 252 are gonna cash. I think the min cash is like 5,000 something. But first prize is $1 million. That would be a really fun one to win. I think probably 4 or 5 levels before we even make it into the money. So let's just focus one hand at a time, one level at a time, see what we can do. First hand we get involved in folds all the way around to the small blind who just limps in, and I'm in the big blind with ace queen of spades. So for 13 big blinds effective, I jam my opponent all in, and to my surprise, he almost beats me into the pot. He snaps me off. He was trapping me with pocket kings.
Oh.
So we go to a flop, comes out 9-7-5. The turn is an ace. Bink right on the turn, and the river is a queen. So unfortunately for him, we hit our ace, sending him to the rail 30 minutes into the day. And after being on the fun side of a bad beat, I pick up the very best hand ever created in poker. I get pocket aces. I open it up to 5,500. Hijack and big blind both make the call. So 3 ways now. The dealer puts out 8-8 deuce rainbow, about as blank as it gets. After big blind checks, I c-bet for 11,000. The hijack player folds and the big blind calls. The turn is a queen of diamonds. And when the big blind checks, he's a really good player, by the way. I played with him on day 1. I continue, I bet 21,000, hoping to jam everything in by the river. But sadly, my opponent folds. I'm not that sad though. This is a great start to the day. I'm already up 45,000, 45 minutes into it. After this dream start to day 2, I pick up plenty of playable hands and lose every single one. Now I'm all the way down to 52,000 when in this hand, low jack opens to 11K. Yeah, that's right, 11K. The big blind is only 3,000. He's done this a few times, so I've had my eye on him in particular because if you're short stacked and a player's standard open is really big, this is a great player to shove on because he's gonna be folding the same amount of hands to your jam, but he is putting in a lot more money before he does so. Anyway, button just makes the call. This is that same good player from the previous hand. And I'm in the small blind with queen jack suited. I only have 52K, around 17 blinds. So this is my moment. When I get both of my opponents to fold in this spot, I pick up more than half of my stack without showdown. And even if one of them does call, it's a good enough hand against whatever they're gonna call with. So I take my shot, I go all in, low jack pretty much snap folds. And the button worries me a little bit. He gets the full count and eventually he makes the call. Not feeling great about this, and I feel even worse when he flips over ace 10 of hearts. So our hearts are dominated, we're in terrible shape, looking for a miracle on this run out here.
Oh, not good.
But the miracle does not come, and all of a sudden, we're out of the tournament. Unfortunately, we took our spot. Didn't work out. Got lucky early on. Ace, queen, 2 kings, so, you know, can't complain there. But unfortunately, sometimes that's how tournaments go. You grind all day. About a day, 12 levels into it, and just now busted. Probably 300 more people need to bust before they're in the money, so nothing else to be said about that. This was a fun event. I'm glad that I got the experience and that I got to play against a lot of really good players. I'm gonna take back a lot of things to work on before the World Series. It was a really fun ride. I'm gonna go see what else there's to jump into, little side events, and I will keep you posted. But if you have made it this far in the video, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.